In this installment, we'll explore the project structure and guide you through the actual setup of the project in Visual Studio. This project follows a layered architecture, which is a good practice for building scalable and maintainable applications. Each layer has its specific responsibilities, making the code base modular and easy to understand. This clean separation of concerns keeps things organized and manageable, making maintenance and testing as easy as pie. Here is a brief overview of each layer. At the heart of the architecture lies the API layer, crafted with the ASP.NET Core Web API. This layer is the gateway to our system, handling incoming HTTP requests and delivering well-structured responses. It contains controllers, program CS, and app settings for the application configurations. It has dependency on the application and data layers. Moving on to the application layer, which encompasses business rules and logic. It contains components to implement these rules and profiles for AutoMapper, which helps in mapping DTOs to domain entities and vice versa. It has a project dependency on domain layer. On the other hand, we have data layer that manages the interaction with the database. It includes DB context, migrations, and repository implementations on how to handle data in the database. We need migrations because we are going to use code-first approach, where you write the classes that represent your data in code, and then use Entity Framework to generate the database schema from them. This layer has a dependency on the domain layer. Going to domain layer, which defines entities that represent the business objects like user and car entities in our case. This layer contains repository interfaces that are implemented in the data layer. It has a project dependency on the utility layer. Descending further to utility layer, this layer houses helper methods and internal or external services. It also provides utility functions that can be shared across different layers. It has a project dependency on contracts layer. Contracts layer includes DTOs, which are data transfer objects, API requests, API responses, and request validations. We'll be using Fluent API to handle these validations. This layer defines communication contracts between API and the outside world. It has a dependency on the commons layer. Finally, we have the commons layer, which contains constants and enums that are shared across the application. This layer provides a centralized place for maintaining commonly used elements. Let's open Visual Studio 2022. If you do not have this software installed in your machine, I have a video on how to download it and install together with other tools that are required in this project. Open Visual Studio. At the top, search for ASP.NET Core Web API, ensuring C# is the programming language, and then select this template and click Next. Here you need to provide the project name and the solution name, but make sure you have unchecked this point where it's saying place solution and project in the same directory. And therefore, the project name is carrental.api and the solution name is carrental. And click Next. Here, make sure framework is .NET Core 8.0 as of now. Authentication type is none. And we're going to use controllers. And click Create to create the project. To test the application, just run it. This will open the browser with the Swagger UI. Click on the API endpoint, then click Try Out. And finally execute the GET request. You'll get back a 200 status code and a list of random weather forecast. This indicates that now we can start building on top of the generated template. Close the browser and go back to Visual Studio. Remove the unnecessary weather forecast model and controller. Also remove this as well. Go to Program CS and rearrange the code in this format. Now we can start adding the other layers. I'm going to use this diagram to add all the layers and project dependencies. Right-click on the solution, go to Add and select New Project. This will open this window. Search for class library and ensure C# is the programming language. Click Next. Here you need to provide the project name. The name will be carrental.application and create. Now add all the other layers as class library with their respective names. Once done with creating all the layers, delete all the unnecessary classes and rebuild the project. Make sure nothing is broken. Now we need to establish project dependencies. We can still follow the diagram. Start with the API. Right-click on the dependencies and add project dependency. Select application and data and click OK. So follow this diagram to add all the project dependencies in each layer. Now go to each layer and add these folders. In application layer, add components and profiles folders as indicated in the diagram. In the data layer, add database, repositories, migrations and extensions folders. Now you can do the same to all layers. Now we need to add the database to this application. To do that, simply go to View, select SQL Server Object Explorer, expand LocalDB MS SQL LocalDB instance, the one that we created in the previous video. Expand databases folder and right-click on the database and add new database. We can name our database as car rental store. Once the database is created successfully, expand and right-click it. Go to the properties and get the connection string. Simply Ctrl A and Ctrl C to copy the connection string value. Now navigate to application layer and open up settings to development.json. Here, add the connection strings like so. We are going to use default connection as the key name for this connection string. You can have as many connection strings as your project required, but for this one, we only need one connection string. Now we have successfully configured our project and even established our database. You can explore the code by cloning the repository from the GitHub link I've provided below. In the upcoming episode, we will dive into creating registration and login API endpoints. Here we will cover Fluent Validation API, ASP.NET Core, Identity, JWT authentication, dependency injection, and so much more. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on the next exciting developments. Thank you for being a part of this coding journey with us.